Hey now! Today we're going to take a look at Star Wars Imperial Assault from Fantasy Flight Games. Yes, this is one of the most hyped, talked about games of this past year, or at least the last few months anyways. It seems to just like come up out of nowhere. I think it was announced at Gen Con, and just like it's been nothing but hype about this game since then. And people have said that this is sort of Star Wars Descent, and I think as we go through the overview, you'll see that there is definitely some stuff in common with Descent, and we'll talk about that more in my final thoughts. But for those that don't know, this is, chronologically speaking, the storyline of Imperial Assault takes place after the fourth movie, in my mind, the first movie, which was A New Hope. So the Death Star was just destroyed by the Rebel Alliance, and now some of the players in the game are rebel officers who are sort of like an elite squad of operatives who are trying to complete missions in order to further the goals of the Rebel Alliance. One player plays the Imperials, so he'll actually take control of all the different stormtroopers and robots and droids and different beasties and things that are trying to stymie the rebels and keep them from completing their missions. This is a scenario campaign-driven game, so you'll have different map setups with all these different tiles, different creatures coming out, different objectives. The goals for each player, both the Imperial player and the Rebel players, the heroes, are going to be different for each map. And then you even have side missions and branching paths and all these different things and upgradings and equipment. Lots and lots of stuff. There's a lot to cover. I can't cover everything. I didn't even mention the fact that there's a separate skirmish game in this box. If you don't want to play campaign mode, you can just do a skirmish game where one player plays the Imperials and builds an army of those troops. The other player plays the Rebels and builds an army of those, and I did try that, so I'll give you some of my thoughts on that as well. Let's go ahead and do a brief overview of how this all works. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, I'm just going to do a brief run-through of the campaign mode of Star Wars Imperial Assault. I'm not going to go over the skirmish rules because I don't think that's the reason that most people are going to be getting this game. I have played it. Really, it's just a two-player head-to-head skirmish miniatures game like a lot of other miniatures games out there. And many of the rules from the campaign mode as to how the actions that you take and how you interact with things and how you roll combat and damage are the same in skirmish mode as they are in campaign mode. So just going through the basic gameplay of campaign mode will probably give you a good taste of what the skirmish mode will be like anyways. Now, this is a scenario-based game based in the Star Wars universe. It takes place directly after Episode 4, A New Hope, when the first Death Star just blew up. One of the players controls the Imperial forces, the stormtroopers and droids and all these different things, so you're controlling multiple different units. The other players in the game, from 1 to 4 players, take control of heroes of the Rebel Alliance. So each of those players will only choose one character and control one character during the course of the game. Now, there's like 4 different rule books in this game, but the most important one for campaign mode is, of course, the campaign guide. And only the the Imperial player is going to have access to everything in this book, because a lot of things are sort of kept secret from the players if you're running them through the campaign. But the campaign is always going to tell you, or the campaign guide is always going to tell you what to do for scenario. It will tell you what tiles to use to build the board. There's a ton of different tiles in this game. What troops to start off with when you put them out on the board, where the heroes start, what their goals are, what their mission objectives are, and what little traps and surprises you can spring for them during the course of the game, information that they're not necessarily privy to. So let's go ahead and describe how the Imperial player is going to set up before we do anything else. As I said, you have the different the board that you'll build out here depending on what the campaign tells you to do. You also have these deployment cards. Deployment cards tell you what troops you're starting off with on the board, and also has their relevant stats. Now, one deployment card may count for multiple different figures out on the board. So here you have a probe droid. So the probe droid has different special abilities, like targeting computer while attacking can roll an extra die. Self-destruct at the end of the round, it can blow up and deal damage to other players. Now, down at the bottom of the card are relevant stats like how much health they can take before they're destroyed, how much speed they have whenever they use an action to activate, the defense die that they roll, and the attack dice that they roll whenever they're making an attack. So it's blue die and 2 yellow die for his attack, but only rolls 1 black dice for defense. Now, all these different stats underneath the card are actually different special abilities that it has, and some of them only happen during combat. So the mobile ability is always on. That means that the probe droid can move wherever it wants regardless of terrain. But these special abilities with the lightning bolt only happen when surges are rolled on the dice, and I'll get back to that with combat. The number up in the corner is how much it costs to deploy this card. The Imperial player is going to gain threat during the course of the game, and that will let him put out these cards, and for other cards, but not the Probe Droid, may even let you put out more of the same type of unit. Here you have an Imperial Officer. The Imperial Officer has different special abilities, just like the Probe Droid. He has an ability that lets him order other players. Whenever you see this little, like, what I call the tap symbol, because they can't sue me, that means you have to spend an action in order to use it. This one lets him move another friendly character within 2 spaces of him, let him move that character essentially, or give that character a special move. He also gets cover whenever he's next to friendly units. And of course he has health and different dice that he can roll as well. And what up would the game be without its own can't hit the broadside of a barn stormtroopers. And here's what I was saying, whenever this card is deployed, these little marks here indicate how many troops come out, and here the smaller number is if you want to spend threat just to bring out more stormtroopers from the same deployment card. So they're all the same, they use the same deployment card, and you'll activate them all at once as well. So then you have the heroes, so we'll go ahead and take a look at them now. There's actually 6 different heroes that come with this base game. I'm just going to go over some of them if I can actually get this in focus. There we go. So here you have Fen Cygnus, who's like a human sharpshooter for the rebels. Just like with the other cards, you have health, but the heroes have endurance. Endurance is that you may have to take strain tokens at some point. Strain tokens are these little EKG tokens. Sometimes you'll willingly take strain tokens, and that's if you're trying to use a special ability that requires you to take strain. So for instance, Fen here has a Havoc shot. He can take a strain in order to, and use while attacking with a ranged weapon. Whenever you see the little gun symbol, it's a ranged weapon. And that lets him add another hit to his attack. He also has Lone Wolf at the end of your activation. If there are no friendly figures adjacent to you, you recover one of your strain. So you can go ahead and spend some strain for special abilities, but you can never willingly spend more strain than whatever your endurance level is. But if some special abilities from enemies force you to take strain, you'll start losing health instead if you're at your max. Just like with the other the enemy figures, if you have speed, well, you always have speed, but you'll spend a movement and get that many, spend an action to move, and you'll get that many points of movement. You'll move that many spaces on the board, and they have defense dice. Now, heroes also have, underneath those stats, they have activation rolls, or I'm sorry, it's attribute tests. Whenever certain aspects of the mission, like interacting with terminals or trying to get through doors, things like that, will sometimes tell you to make one of these checks using one of these icons. That's how many dice you roll, and you're trying to get the lightning bolt surge icons for doing so. So I'll quickly show you some of the other characters in the game. You have Diala Pacel, who's like a Jedi. I don't know how that's possible after A New Hope, but whatever. You have Garkon, who is a Wookiee, because of course there's going to be a Wookiee. And the last one I'll show you, if I can grab her, is Jin Odan, who's like a human scoundrel. So they all have different special abilities, and if you ever take more health than what your total health level is, or if you ever meet or beat that number, you have to flip over to your wounded side. Your health resets, but now you have less special abilities. And if you take your max damage or your max level in health again, you are out of that scenario. In a lot of cases, that will actually end the scenario as well. So that's just kind of a quick run through of the different characters that you might start the game with. Now I'll tell you how a typical round of the game will work. So you'll start the scenario, you'll look at what the campaign conditions are. It's going to be different for both players. So for instance, in this, the starting scenario, which is the Aftermath scenario, the rebel troops, and here I'll actually show you their miniatures as well. So this ragtag band of misfits from the rebels are starting off on the map, and they're trying to get into this Imperial like communications base in order to destroy the terminals that might alert the Empire to, I don't know, their presence, or to find out where these other rebels are, whatever, something like that. And so the Imperial player is trying to keep them from getting into the base. Now, for the Imperial player, it's just a matter of running out the clock. You have a round tracker over here. This board actually doubles as a threat tracker and a round tracker. The green number is how many rounds have taken place. In this scenario, you only need to keep them from getting into the base for 6 rounds and destroying all the terminals. If you can run out the clock that way, then the Imperials will win the game. Also, at the end of every round during the status phase, you keep gaining 2 threat. Threat can be used to deploy whole new units of cards, and the campaign will tell you which cards are available for you to deploy, or they'll let you reinforce more units of cards that you already have deployed. So you just have to, it's just a waiting game for you and keeping them from getting in. The rebel heroes have to destroy every one of these little terminals that are on the board. You can attack them just like you can the other characters. The only other thing of note on this board, well, there is a door, of course, which you have to use an action to interact with and get through. And what the heroes don't know is that door will actually slam shut once they go through it, and some more troops will come out to reinforce them. You also have these crates which the heroes can pop open in order to get some supply cards. So supply cards are a cool part of this game where you draw it and you'll get a special card. Sometimes it's usually good. I think it's always good, actually. But here's some valuable goods cards. You can discard this at the end of the mission to get an extra 100 credits. So if you're playing in campaign mode, you can get more credits to buy cool items. You have a shock grenade, and there's Bacta infusion, and all kinds of really helpful things that only the heroes can gain access to. So play always starts with the rebel players. You'll decide who's going to go first. You have these activation tokens, which will tell you, you'll flip it over to the red side whenever one of the heroes is activated, and then you'll begin. Now, the play structure for the Imperials and for it's always going to go rebel player, then the Imperial player will activate one of his deployments, in other words, one of his cards, and activate every troop for that card. Then it'll go back to a rebel player and then back and forth until everyone has had a turn. If there are less heroes than 4 in the game, then you actually get some special reward cards that will let you get extra activations. But we'll just go with what a normal 5-player game setup would be for now. Every player has 2 actions on their turn. What they do with those actions is up to them, but you have multiple different options. One of them is simply to move. You spend an action to move, you get however many speed points are on your card, and you can move that many spaces. And you can move twice if you want to, both the Imperials and the heroes. Then you can choose to attack. Now, only heroes can use both of their actions to attack. The Imperials can only attack once, because I think that would probably be a little bit too overwhelming to gang up on somebody. Attacking is as simple as looking and see. First, if you're using a special ability, you'll refer to the dice for that. But most characters, and in fact all the heroes, will start with at least one weapon. Weapon cards will tell you how many dice you get to roll as well. So let me see if I can focus on that. So in other words, Finn here has an infantry rifle. His infantry rifle tells him that when he shoots, he gets to roll a blue and a green. And here's what happens if he gets surges on his dice. So let's go ahead and take a look at those dice. So you have multiple different things here of note. Anytime you see this little star symbol here, that's a hit. Hits are what you want if you are rolling to try and hit someone and get through their defenses. The number is accuracy. This only matters for ranged attacks. You have to get a number of accuracy equal to the spaces between you and your opponent. So if Finn was trying to, well, let's see. First off, I might even focus. So let's say that this was how this was set up. Finn back here was wanting to shoot this stormtrooper in the front. He would have to hope that he gets at least 3 accuracy on the dice as well as hits, because it's 3 spaces away. You always count spaces in this diagonally or orthogonally the same. So you roll the dice and hope that you get hits and accuracy, or else you'll just completely whiff anyways. The other thing of note on the attack dice are the surges. The surges are what I've been referencing before. Those are what lets you use special abilities on your weapons or your character card. You can trade in surges for extra accuracy, extra damage. It all depends on what your weapon is. So, for instance, Finn's infantry rifle here says you can spend a surge in order to get an extra hit, and spend a surge to get +1 accuracy if you really need to hit with that weapon on that turn. When you roll, you'll take however many dice are coming to you. So in this case, it's a blue and a green. And then the character that you're attacking, or the miniature you're attacking, gets to roll their defense die. And the defense die has these little triangle things here, which count as defenses. Each one of these cancels out one of the hits. Each one of these, 2 semicircles put together, cancels out a surge on the dice if it comes up as that. And if a character is lucky enough to roll the white die has one other symbol. This symbol here actually completely makes the attack that's coming at you completely miss, regardless of how many hits that they got. So you'll both roll your dice at the same time, and hits cancel out, or I'm sorry, defenses cancel. You can't even see that. Defenses cancel out hits. The little semicircles cancel out the surges. Whatever damage gets through, you're going to take that many damage. And if miniature takes too much damage, especially the Imperials, they just pop off the board just like that. Melee attacks work exactly the same, except you don't care about accuracy. You just have to be adjacent to the target. Look at how many dice you have. Roll that many dice. Defender rolls as many dice as they have coming to them, and so on. You can also choose to rest on your turn. If you rest, you get however much endurance you have. You get to remove that many strain off of your card. If you do this in excess of how much strain you actually took, you get to start removing health damage instead. You can also choose to interact with the environment. So in this scenario, any of the heroes can come up to the door, interact with it, and remove it from the game. They essentially open it. But of course, for this scenario, once you finish the rounds, whenever the door is open, it slams, shuts, and locks, which can be very, very unfortunate for the heroes. A couple of other important things of note: the Imperial player actually gets access to class decks that he'll always choose a basic card out of, the same way that the heroes will choose a basic card from their starting character deck, and that'll give them a special ability during the course of the game. So for instance, for this deck, it can start off with the Show of Force ability, which is going to let you exhaust this card when an Imperial figure declares an attack, and that figure becomes focused. The focused player gets to use an extra green die for the next action roll. Much of the other stuff that comes in the game really shines when you go through different campaigns and start accruing experience points and credits as well. So for instance, every character, including the Imperial player, has their little class deck or character deck, and the other cards that are in here have XP costs down in the bottom corner. You can spend XP between campaign missions in order to upgrade and get new cards and new options for your character. You're also going to have marketplace cards, which are like better equipment you can buy with credits that you earn during the missions. There'll be a credit cost down in the corner, and these are usually going to be better weapons than the ones the heroes currently have. You'll lay some of them out randomly, and the heroes will have a chance to buy them. Some missions are also going to tell you to do side missions as you go through the game. So it will tell you that you might go into the Brushfire mission or the Temptation mission. It will say right in the campaign log whether you go off on one of these different side missions before continuing back to the main game. And that might actually net you access to special reward cards. So there's actually a lot of stuff in this game. I'm just not going to have time to go over every single little thing. But needless to say, if you choose to go through the full campaign mode, you have a lot of different options that become available to you as you progress. Upgrading your characters if you're one of the heroes, upgrading your Imperial class, getting different missions and getting credits, getting better equipment. All these different things and more could be yours in Star Wars Imperial Assault. Now let's get to my final thoughts. Actually, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't show you some of the other cool miniatures that come in the game. So obviously the coolest one, and this does require some assembly, is the AT-AT. I think it's pronounced, or the AT-AT. This cool mobile gun, and the whole top section actually moves. That's a really cool one. You have like this critter here, who's like one of the creatures from Attack of the Clones that they fought in the arena, I think. I'm not even sure. I can't remember what it's called exactly. You have the E-Web gunner, which will come out sometimes, which is like a huge turret that shoots at the heroes. And then, of course, this comes with the Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader expansion packs right in the box, which have their own little side missions associated with them. And, of course, you can also use them in the skirmish game should you choose to do so. Here is Luke Skywalker, looking very menacing with just a normal blaster pistol. Anyways, now let's get to my final thoughts. All right, well, there's a lot to sort of unpack with this game as far as my thoughts. And in my overview, I didn't give you, like, anywhere near all the content that was in there, but you don't want to know spoilers anyway as far as the campaign goes. One thing I'll get out of the way right up front, the skirmish game. I only played one match of the skirmish game. It was a very brief one, and we just wanted to get a feel for it. Not for me. And I don't even want to spend too much time on it because I don't think that most people, including myself, really bought this game expecting to have a deep, strategic, tactical, miniature skirmish game. I'm happy that it's there and you have that option, and there's some neat parts to it. I like the command cards, and I like building your armies can just be fun because, you know, in some of the scenarios of the actual campaign, you aren't playing with the entire allotment of characters, and they're not even available to you depending on the campaign mode. So especially if you're playing as an Imperial, if you're like, I really want to put that creature out, you have a little more flexibility of that in the skirmish depending on the missions that you choose and things like that. So that can be fun, but still, it's not really this is not the main event of this game. And I think that there are other, unless you really want to play a miniatures game based on Star Wars, because I don't think there's another one currently like in print right now. I know there was another Star Wars miniatures game a long time ago, but relatively long ago. But if you just want to play a sci-fi miniature skirmish game, you have other options. Don't even worry about it. I think the Infinity game looks really cool. Check that one out, okay? Or War Machine, which is also like technology wizards. But that's not why you're here, I think. The campaign mode is where it's at in Imperial Assault. And what I said in the beginning of the video, that people had compared this to Descent. They essentially said, well, this is the Descent system, and it is. You know, people knew that going in. It's the Descent system with the Star Wars theme on it. But even having said that, my opinion going in was, well, chances are this is going to be very, very different. Because, I mean, it's Star Wars, right? It's a very different theme than the Dungeons & Dragons type fantasy theme of the world of Terranoth that Descent is based in. And yeah, people have said, oh, Star Wars is really more of a fantasy game, but no, it's really more of a science fiction game. You have laser pistols, there's the AT-ATs, or AT-AT, whatever you're supposed to pronounce it, the giant, you know, the droids and all the blaster cannons, and there's a guy with like a turret pistol thing, and you're like, whoa, this has got to be just the framework of Descent, right? And be a very different game, the same way that Dominion is the framework of so many other deck builders that have come after it that just end up being completely different than Dominion. Like Legendary compared to Dominion is like apples and oranges, really. But having played through several of the different scenarios now, this is Descent. I will say that I like this game a lot. I might love this game if I play it more, Imperial Assault and specifically. Just like I love Descent. But if I have a complaint, it's that it is not really that different from Descent at all. I felt like I was playing Descent. If you had plopped me out of the table with no context and just put these characters in front of me, I'd be like, oh wow, this is a very odd scenario for Descent. Because that's what it is. From the way that combat works, from the way that you upgrade your characters, through the movement rules and attacking rules and special abilities working, and just the campaign mode in general, this is reskinned Descent. And how you react to that sentence is going to determine what your opinion of this game is going to be. Because if you did not like Descent, well, I never played the first edition of Descent, but let's just say you played the second edition and you didn't like it, wasn't for you, I would not even bother playing this game. Because there's not enough new stuff here. Even if you love Star Wars, this may not be the one for you. And if you do love Star Wars and you love Descent, man, you're probably not even watching this video and never will because you're too busy playing it. You're too busy playing your copy of Imperial Assault because this is right up your alley. And I don't want to sound too harsh about this because I love Descent and I think I'll grow to love Imperial Assault as well, but I am disappointed that there wasn't enough different stuff here. And I know that there are people who are already in love with Imperial Assault who will be jumping out of their chair and screaming, but what about this that's different? What about the threat tracker? What about the way that upgrades work? And all these, and the side missions. Yes, there are differences in this game, and they're cool. I like the threat dial. I like the side missions, which I never got too deep into Descent, so I don't know if those were introduced later on, but I know that Myth, a very popular, controversial game that was a dud for me and my group, had the concept of side missions, and I thought that was the one cool thing about that game that they totally flubbed and was totally clunky and didn't make sense and didn't work because it's like you come onto a tile and you're like in a whole other adventure all of a sudden. They work much better here in Imperial Assault, and I like them a lot. And I like how the threat dial works and how it gives me kind of that Omega Protocol type feeling, level 7 Omega Protocol, where you gain threat consistently round by round. The longer that the heroes keep the mission going, you're gaining more threat and can put out more troops and you just become that much more dangerous. That is a great aspect to the game. So there are differences and they're fun, but really at its core it's Descent. But that's kind of okay with me. I never did a formal Descent 2.0 review, but it's on my top 100 list, pretty high. So what I'll say that I like about that is the same thing I like about Imperial Assault. The dice rolling system is very simple and very intuitive, but still very cool. You're just rolling defense dice to get defenses against the hits that your opponent's rolling against. If you're using a ranged attack, you just look at the accuracy numbers on the dice, which means everything's very simple. You don't have a ton of dice in this game. Everything that you need to know is right on those dice. If you're not using a ranged attack, you don't worry about the accuracy numbers. Now you have some different aspects of the dice. You have the white die, which can completely negate an attack, but not every character has access to the white die. The black dice are worse, but you also have the possibility of canceling out the surges, the whole surge thing where you roll surges and get different special abilities, and most characters, or I should say the weapons for the heroes and then some of the troops that the Imperial has access to, have different things that can happen depending on how you choose to use your surge, so there's some strategy and depth to that. Now, this is a one versus all game, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, but I particularly enjoy it. And I don't think that it's a balanced game, but I don't think it should be. I think that the point here is, even though it's a board game, it's just to have fun and have adventures and tell these stories. And sometimes the Imperial player is going to be shellacked. You're going to be in a situation where you can't do much about it, and then sometimes that's going to be the flip side, where the heroes are like, how can we even win against these odds? We can't even get into that room and destroy the things, and we're running out of time. And there's going to be scenarios like that, but really, with the bevy of side missions and the fact that even if you lose a scenario, it's not like you're done. You just go to a different branching path of the game, and you might have some disadvantages. You still get stronger. You still gain XP. You still upgrade your character cards, and get if you get enough credits, you can get different items. And I like the whole random item draw thing and having a marketplace to buy from. These are all the fun things that were handled in mostly like the same, maybe not exactly the same way, but the same idea of Descent, and it's what I like about it in that game. I really enjoy here. I think this one feels a little more streamlined than Descent, which is an improvement, and I like that quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of cards in this game, and I like the idea of the supply cards, so the heroes can pop a crate and get some items. That's the equivalent of the like search tokens in Descent, but you know, it's cool here because it makes thematic sense as well. The whole thing with the deployment of the Imperial troops and using the your threats, I already kind of mentioned that, but that's a really cool thing too, and you have different cards that you can deploy during the course of the game. It's always awesome when you can drop some huge unexpected thing down in the middle of the board, and the heroes are like, what is this? I thought we were doing so well. So there's those kind of shocking got you moments here that it just works really well and is very cool. I like that every character feels different and distinct, and you can upgrade yourself in such a way, if you're one of the heroes, to sort of flesh out your character the way you want it to. It's never going to be a full role-playing experience, but at least mechanically speaking, you can play the character that you want. And the Imperial player is the same way, because you have access to the different Imperial decks and can customize your character that way, and you know, every deck has a different focus. It's really, really cool. And that's why I'm saying that this game shines when you're doing campaign mode. I wouldn't recommend getting it for the skirmish mode, and I wouldn't recommend getting it if you're just going to like pull it out and play a certain campaign mission, you know, once every few months. Like, oh, this one looks interesting, let's just do this. No, much like Descent, and I'm sad that I've never gotten to play Descent as much as I want to this way, but it really, really works well if you have the same group of players that you can play consistently, level up, get the full type of RPG experience out of it. That's where this game is going to do very well, like its older brother. If you're a Star Wars fan, if you've never played Descent before, but you like what you've seen, you like the idea of it, you like playing as the different characters, give it a shot. It's expensive enough that I don't think you should do an auto buy on it, but if you know someone else that has it, definitely give it a try. If you didn't like Descent and you love Star Wars, I don't think there's going to be anything here for you. I think you'd be better off finding another Star Wars game, like maybe X-Wing, that maybe will give you, that maybe you will like. I don't know. There's not a ton of options for Star Wars board games yet, but there are some. And if you don't like Descent, there's no reason for you to try this one out. But for people that do love Descent, it's just going to come down to, do you need another Descent type game? If you're not in love with Star Wars, do you need this one? Do you just love Descent so much that you just want more and more and more? If it's in a different game, that's fine. That might be a reason for you to go to it as well. For me, I think that I can have them both in my collection because thematically they're different. There's different campaign missions. They do give me some different feels, but they're still familiar enough that my love can sort of, that sounds very strange, but my love for the games can sort of go to both of them and have room in my collection, at least for now. I don't know if I'm going to keep up with the inevitable onslaught of packs that will be coming out for Imperial Assault, but I definitely want to see what comes next. I didn't even have a chance to try the Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader mini packs that come boxed in the game, which is another cool thing that comes here. And by the way, I didn't even talk about the components, but like any Final Fantasy Flight game, the components are sort of unimpeachable. The majors look awesome. The AT-AT's a little hard to put together, but other than that, everything looks fantastic. So there's a lot of stuff in this box, a lot of stuff to analyze and sort of go over, but what it comes down to is, do you love Star Wars? Do you love RPG in a box type games like Descent? Then you definitely want to give this one a try. I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to play it some more, and I'm sure it's going to be shooting up to the top of my top 100 list next year. That is Star Wars Imperial Assault. Check it out.